Hi, it's Steve. Today we'd like to show you how to change the middle door hinge on your refrigerator. It's a really easy repair. Let me show you how we do it. Now, to do this repair, although it is not necessary, you may wish to turn the refrigerator off during that procedure. So simply open up the fresh food door, locate the temperature control, turn it to the off position, and then we can start the repair. Just remember to turn it back on to the proper setting once you complete the repair. Now, our next step will be to remove the hinge cover. On some models it may be held in place with a screw, others it simply snaps on. If it's just a snap-on version, just push it slightly forward and lift up on it. Remove it and set it aside, and that will give us access to the 3 screws that secure the top hinge to the cabinet, so we'll need to remove those next. Those are typically a 5/16 hex head screw. Now, as we remove the last screw, you want to make sure that you support that door. Well, the magnetic gasket should hold it in place. You can just pivot that hinge around and leave it in the door. Take the freezer door in both hands, open it slightly, then lift it off of the center hinge, and we'll set that aside. Our next step will be to remove the 2 5/16 screws that are on the outside edge of that center hinge. So with a 5/16 wrench, we're just going to loosen those a few turns. Now next we'll remove the screw on the left-hand side of that hinge. Be sure to support that fresh food door as you remove that screw. And just open the door slightly. Allow that hinge to slide out from underneath the 2 outside screws, and then you can lift it away. You can close that door back up and make sure that the magnet is holding it in place. Now, our next step will be to install the spacer washers on the new hinge. So simply remove them from the old one and then position them on the new one. As well, there is a protective gasket on the back side of that hinge. You'll need to remove that and transfer it to the new one. So you may wish to use a thin blade putty knife to carefully separate those 2 pieces. You can then discard the old hinge, position the gasket on the new one, and we're going to place that hinge into the fresh food door. We'll pivot that hinge around until we can slide the ends under those 2 screws on the edge of the cabinet. You just make sure that we lift up on that door and slide that hinge under those 2 retaining screws. We just need to make sure that we have that hinge positioned properly so that the left-hand screw hole lines up. Tighten it securely. And using our wrench, we'll tighten the 2 outside ones. Make sure there's enough lubrication on those spacer washers, and if not, be sure to add a little bit of food grade rated lubricant. Once we have that center hinge secure, we're then ready to put the freezer door back on. So simply lift it into position, line up that hinge pin with the opening in the bottom of the door, pivot it into place, allow the gasket to hold it up against the cabinet, and then we'll pivot the top hinge around and secure it with the screws. Now, when installing the screws for that top hinge, we're not going to tighten any of them until we have all 3 of them started. Making sure they go in straight and easily so that they're not cross-threaded. Now, before we tighten them, we want to check the alignment of that freezer door to the fresh food door, you should maintain an even gap between the surfaces of both doors, as well as a even spacing along the top of the cabinet. If need be, simply lift up or pull down on that door to position it properly. With it held in place, we'll then tighten those screws. We're now ready to put the hinge cover back in place. Simply snap it down onto the hinge. Now with the door securely in place, remember to turn the thermostat back to its original position. And your repair is complete.